dairy, ice cream, milk, custard, sour cream. I love dairy. Cheese. I'm not a huge cheese fan though. That's more my husband. Cheese is like a food group to him. Dairy foods, doesn't matter which way you cut it. They're kind of like a comfort food for most of us unless we're hardcore lactose intolerant or have an allergy to it. But it's still really good, no matter how it makes us feel. I don't know about you, but every now and again I will still test the waters, not feel so great the next day and go, yeah, it's still no good for me. Having said that, I've been off dairy for a little while now. And so whenever I go off it for, say, a good 6 months and then I have it again, I seem to be okay with it. So as long as I only have a coffee every now and again here in Bangkok when I'm out and about, which is once a week, I'm okay with just ordering normal milk. It doesn't seem to affect me. But today we're going to talk about lipedema and dairy and why it's not really recommended for us girls with lipedema. Ready? So lipedema is an inflammatory disease. It makes inflammation and it's made worse by inflammation. So the goal of lipedema in any person is to reduce inflammation because that's what causes the pain. That's what causes the swelling. That's what causes the discomfort. So that's always the main goal with lipedema, with anything that we look at. Because if we can lower inflammation, we can lower our pain levels, we can lower the progression of the disease, we can lower mental health issues when we are coping with the disease, and we can improve our everyday lipedema life. So dairy, which is in this case, we're talking about the milk from another animal. So primarily we're talking about milk from cows, but under this generally will also fall milk from sheep, milk from goats, milk from buffalo. Some of these are more tolerated than others. Goat's milk particularly is more tolerated than others. But in general, if we are looking at dairy, we're talking about all animals' milk, which is designed for their babies. Dairy food is actually not designed for us. It's designed to grow their baby animals to a big size. Not ideal for us. So what's wrong with dairy? Why should we avoid it? For that very reason, let's take cow's milk. Cow's milk is in a specific ratio of nutrients, fats, proteins, and so on to grow a baby cow very quickly to a big cow. It has growth hormone in it that accelerates this process. And that's not something that we need in our bodies with lipedema. Dairy food has also shown to have pro-inflammatory markers in it, so it can promote inflammation in the body. We don't want that either. Dairy foods are one of the most common allergens out there. So there's a list of common allergens: eggs, dairy, shrimp, citrus foods. There's a few others. I think there's about 7 main allergens out there. So whatever's in milk, not only is half the world intolerant to it, it's a very strong allergen for a lot of people as well. So that tells you that the makeup of it is not designed for us as people. Dairy can affect our hormone balance, it can get it out of kilter, and it can cause insulin spikes. Unless you're having full fat cream, so I think in the carnivore world, if you are consuming cream that's higher than 35% fat, that will not cause an insulin spike, because it's mostly fat, not so much sugars of the milk. So if you think of milk as lactose, toast, taste, all of that is sugar. So it's lact sugar, right? So that's what we need to remember with dairy. It will spike insulin levels. So if we're trying to keep our hormones stable, because what are the 2 rules of lipedema? Lower your inflammation and keep your hormones stable. And your hormones include your blood sugar, your insulin levels. So if you're having dairy a lot in a keto diet, the chaffles, the cheese chaffles, amazing. I've been there, I've tried them, but they will spike insulin every time you have them, which in turn destabilizes your hormone levels and in turn drives lipedema. There's another ingredient in dairy foods, specifically cow, and that's the casein. And It's literally called casomorphines. So it's addictive. Okay, it is highly addictive, particularly when it's concentrated. So you take milk that's got casomorphines in it, and then you concentrate it into cheese or ice cream or sour cream or the high fat, whipping cream, then you've got far more of the casomorphines in it, and that is addiction. So that will keep you addicted to eating it. So if you're struggling to get off cheese, and I hear that most plant-based eaters and vegans, that the last thing that they give up is the cheese because it's so hard to give up. That's why. It's because it contains an addictive substance that keeps you going back for more. So don't beat yourself up if you're struggling to give that up. The worst offenders in the dairy world, they're all bad offenders, but the worst offenders is when it is dairy combined with some kind of sugar. So your iced coffees, your flavored milks, cheesecakes, ice cream, custard. Custard's a personal comfort food for me growing up. So any of those that combines the sugar with the dairy is highly inflammatory to the body. So bad. And unfortunately, it's always wrapped in some kind of comfort food. What do you do as a teenager when you break up with somebody? It's ice cream. It's just shocking that all our comfort foods is what's contributed to our inflammation, to our pain. And now we have to try and find other ways to comfort ourselves that is not food wrapped up in an inflammatory marker or an inflammatory spike to our body. Another worse option for dairy is the low fat. Now, this is much like having the cola and the diet cola. I say to anyone, if you're going to have it, have the full sugar cola, because the low sugar cola comes with artificial sweeteners, which will kill you far quicker than the full sugar cola. This is the same in low fat products. So to make something low fat, you're taking out the thing that stabilizes the insulin spike. So that's why the 35% whipping cream is okay on carnivore, because it's got more fat than carbs in it. Whereas when you've made it low fat and you've taken away the fat, so like that's your skim milk and your half and half and those sorts of things, you've taken away the very ingredient that helps to stabilize it in your body, which will lead to a quicker insulin spike and a quicker blood glucose leveler than you ever would have had you had the full fat version. So again, if you're going to have any of these kinds of products, have the full fat version. Never have the skim milk, the low this, the low that. And just to remember, anytime the companies have tinkered with taste so that they can give you low fat, low sugar, high protein, whatever else it is, they have to make it taste the same as the normal thing. So to make it taste the same, they're putting in all kinds of other things that you normally wouldn't touch. They're either elevating the sugar or they're elevating the chemicals or whatever they're doing. They have to change it so that we will consume it. So we're getting tricked every step of the way. So that's the thing. If you're going to have the food, as Bernadette says on The Big Bang Theory, have the fatty fat version, okay? Always, every time. And have the cola, have the full cola. Do not have the diet version of anything, yogurts, you name it. Now, the other thing that should be avoided, if you can at all, is the pre-processed cheeses, because they've got all sorts of additives. And I'm not just talking about the sliced cheese that goes on your burger nice and easily. Convenience. Convenience is killing us. It's not just those. I'm even talking about the pre-shredded mozzarellas and the pre-shredded pizza cheeses and all that kind of thing, because what they do is they coat the inside with these powders to make them last longer so they don't go moldy, because cheese will go moldy otherwise shredded and just put on the fridge for months on end. Those extra additives are generally inflammatory. One of the ingredients in those is generally aluminium. So you're just eating aluminium if you're grabbing the pre-shredded because it's convenient. Convenience is killing us. Okay, so when can dairy be beneficial for us? There are times that it is okay, or there are times where we don't kind of understand the makeup of the ingredient where it's okay. And I've touched on some of these. The first one is butter and ghee. So butter is generally not dairy. Butter is generally fat. The dairy has pretty much all been extracted. The whey has all been extracted from it. So you class that as a fat. And I use that to cook with, and I've never had any issues with using butter. But if butter is an issue, you can go to ghee, which is even more purified version. Definitely no lactose whatsoever in ghee. Again, the heavy cream, as long as you don't have any sensitivity to lactose, as long as you don't have an intolerance or an allergy, heavy cream you may find useful in coffee, that kind of thing. I have asked for, this may be showing my age, but I have asked for Vienna coffees in coffee shops. Most of them in Australia. I haven't asked for them here in Bangkok. I think it would go over their heads. Vienna coffees are literally black coffee with whipped cream in the top. So that would be a suitable way of minimizing the lactose, but still having something you enjoy when you're out. So give that a shot, because I have asked, and most coffee shops, even though they're not on the menu anymore in most cases, they still know what they are. So the heavy cream, as long as you have no issues with dairy in general that you seem to be aware of, that is an option for you. Let's look at fermented dairy products. So we're talking about kefir potentially, but we're mostly talking about yogurt. And everybody sees yogurt as helpful and good for the gut and does all these good things for us, which is mostly true. However, what are we eating? We are not eating traditionally pot-set fermented plain yogurt with nothing in it, are we? No, we're eating the beautiful butterscotch and honeycomb flavored blueberry honey sugared lovely yogurt that actually doesn't taste like yogurt anymore, tastes like a dessert, right? And that dessert is contributing to your inflammation. Look at the sugar value on the back. If it's got a sugar value in your little pot of, more than 4 grams, which is a teaspoon, I know. Look, I have bought them as desserts, but I was not fooling myself. I knew it was a dessert. Okay, so it definitely was slightly better than getting ice cream or something like that, but there's no fooling it. You need to get the traditionally made pot set. There's recipes out there for coconut pot set yogurt. You could make yourself at home, far cheaper, because buying coconut yogurt is generally cost prohibitive in the shops. So making your own may be the way to go. Getting a lovely Greek yogurt and then trying to continue to make your own from home, that would be another way to do it. But again, it's still quite high in the dairy, the lactose. So even though it's got fermentation in it to help with the gut bacteria, if you're sensitive to lactose in any way, they mitigate one another. It's sort of, you're not doing anything. So think carefully about what you actually can tolerate in your body before you keep trying to tell yourself, because marketing has told you that yogurt is really good for you. Because that's what we fall victim to, is the marketing and the age-old stories. We have neural pathways that tell us yogurt is good for us, don't we? And we try really, really hard to ignore that as we learn new things, but it is really hard. So don't beat yourself up if you're still like, oh, I've got to have that yogurt. Odds are that strawberry yogurt or that apricot yogurt that you really have to have, what you're wanting is not the yogurt part, not the beneficial bacteria, but the fruit or whatever flavors in it. That goes for the fermented and the probiotic drinks, the Yakults. They are so sweet. Why? I have seen YouTubers, expats in the effort, in the lead up to moving here, that drink these day in and day out to keep their bacteria great for moving to a new country. The amount of sugar, insane. So just be really mindful of everything you pick up, because those sugars, inflammation. Those sugars mean pain. That's kind of the bottom line there. Now, another one that potentially might be all right for you, and one of them is okay for me, is aged cheeses. They have far less lactose in them. Now, specifically for me, Parmesan. Parmesan cheese I can have quite happily. in meat and things like that. I haven't had any since I've been over here because I haven't found it anywhere. I'm just going without, which is fine. But Parmesan, or Parmesan, I think is probably how you're supposed to say it, has very little lactose left in it. So if you really, really need some cheese and you're trying to get yourself off it, probably go to that, or some really aged cheddars. Again, has a much lower rate of lactose in it and therefore easier on the body. So let's turn to the goat, the sheep, and A2. So there are some cows that have A2 proteins in them instead of the A1. It's a type of dairy. They're often more well tolerated by most people. If you're a hardcore dairy person and you just can't go without it, you can't live life without it, then consider the A2. Goats' products are generally all A2, as are sheep. And what makes this better is a lower amount of casomorphines, but there is still some in there. So you will still find it addictive, just not as much. And they will be less inflammatory than the A1 varieties as well, which is helpful. Now let's look at dairy from a perspective of what does it do for us generally? And that is calcium. All right, you ask anybody on the planet and you'll say, where do you get your calcium? And they'll say dairy. And so again, are indoctrinated into this idea that the only way we can get dairy is through drinking the milk of another animal. I love it, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't track with me. And here's the thing, in our effort to have so much dairy for our calcium levels, we are having all the things we shouldn't. After I finished 4 years of college studying naturopathy, clinical nutrition, and Western herbal medicine, I went on to study dietetics because I decided I could do better in the federal system of health, which was being a dietitian. And I lasted 3 semesters. I thought I could play the game because everything is based on the, Australian pyramids and all this kind of thing. But one day in class, we were talking about dairy foods and we had a case study, a young teenager. We had to go through his daily diet and discuss what should be taken out and what should be left in and all this kind of thing. There was a 600 ml iced coffee in his list of foods that he ate every day. And everybody was leaving it in and I wanted to take it out because I knew from the posts that I do on thyroid school and so on that in a 600 ml iced coffee, you can have 20 teaspoons of sugar. They're so sweet. They're beautiful, but they're so sweet. The teacher, the lecturer, said, no, we need to leave that in because we need to promote our young people to have more dairy foods. That was kind of the starting point of me going, okay, I can't do this. I can't play this game. And so I did not continue with those studies. Dairy is so tricky because we can get calcium from other things, but perhaps what we're not doing is we're not getting enough vitamin D and enough vitamin K that takes the calcium from what we're already consuming and putting it to where it needs to be. There's this pathway of how things work, and we keep trying to isolate them into little sections. This equals this and this equals this, when it doesn't. It's more like those strange algebra that I didn't do in high school, that is this minus this and plus this and in brackets this, and that's what our body looks like. It's never A plus B equals C, but that's what we tend to be doing with all the nutritions. Even as I'm doing all of these videos, I'm breaking each one down because that's how we consume information as humans. But I'm hoping that as I do each one and as I introduce the cofactors and the things that we need with each thing, that you'll begin to learn that, oh, it's a symphony. It's like it all goes together. It's not individual bits and pieces. That's what I want to impart to you through these videos. So just for some non-dairy sources of calcium, one of the highest sources of calcium going around is sesame seeds, believe it or not. And in fact, in Australia, I had a sesame seed grinder where sometimes I would grind the sesame seeds if I was having a little bit of veg, or even on my eggs, on scrambled eggs. It was actually really, really nice So sesame seeds is up there for calcium levels. Dark green leafy veg, broccoli and sweet potatoes all have good calcium levels. Again, it could just mean making sure your vitamin D, your magnesium, your vitamin K2 all are in good supply so that the calcium you do get from these things gets shunted into the areas it needs to be rather than just staying in the gut, which is what happens without the magnesium, the vitamin D, and the K2. I love dairy still, even after saying all of that, even after reading the bad things. I just don't have it every day. That's the key. We can have the things that bring us joy every now and again. It's the things that we do every single day, for good or for bad, that moves the dial in one direction or the other.